This is the Moonlight Graham Show, a freewheeling conversation with the role players, the underdogs, and guys with flat-out great stories in sports.
Hello and welcome back to the Moonlight Graham Show, where we celebrate the role players and the underdogs in sports. And this week on the podcast, I got my brother Neil here, and we're going to be talking about the Hall of Fame baseball players that are playing in the game today. So our goal with today's episodes is to project out all of the guys that are currently playing in the major leagues that will eventually be enshrined in Cooperstown. So one thing baseball has done right, and I've been pretty critical of Major League Baseball over the past couple of years, but it seems like they have made a lot of changes in a short amount of time to the way they handle the Major League Baseball draft, to the way they handle All-Star Weekend, and now how they handle Cooperstown as well, because all of that now is within the same 5-day stretch in the middle of summer where nothing else is going on but baseball. And so now during that all-star stretch, you've got the Major League Baseball draft, which they've done a really nice job with. Then you have the baseball, the MLB All-Star Weekend. And then right after MLB All-Star Weekend, you've got the Hall of Fame ceremonies and inductions, which we just had recently. The big guy on that was Big Papi. David Ortiz was the biggest name coming into the Hall of Fame this past weekend. But you also had Jim Cott, Tony Oliva. You had Buck O'Neil, which I can't believe it took so long to get Buck O'Neil in the Hall of Fame. And you had another Negro Leagues guy in as well, Bud Foster. So I think baseball, Neil, has been doing this right. And I'm actually surprised to see how many changes they've made to all of this within a short amount of time. Where are you at right now, Neil, with the draft, the All-Star Weekend, and where they're doing the Hall of Fame ceremonies?
Well, yeah, I never really thought about that way. I knew that we kind of had thought moving the All-Star game, or not the All-Star game, the draft to where it is now in connection with the All-Star game was a really smart idea. But I had never thought that now, it was right before the All-Star game weekend, which is always a really fun weekend too. And I feel like it is still one of the weekends that matters a lot to baseball fans too. Like I remember growing up watching, just these random Hall of Fame induction ceremonies for guys. And my dad would be watching it, just crying his eyes off. It's funny to just, think of how these baseball players can have like that of emotional impact on someone's life. And I feel like it's almost like the result of watching these guys 162 days out of the year, like they become part of your life. And then watching them get enshrined into Cooperstown is emotional for a lot of people too. And I think that's really special. And I like how they've kind of tied it with all these other baseball events that are fun.
Yeah. You've got the next generation of guys getting drafted. And then 3 days later, you've got the All-Star game, which is still the best All-Star game in sports. And then a couple of days after that, 3-4 days after that, you've got Cooperstown. So you've got like the entire culmination of the baseball experience happening within 7 days now. And I think that's pretty cool. So the way that we're going to do this episode is I've broken down today's players into 5 different categories. The first category is the Harmon Killebrews category. So the Harmon Killebrews category is just no doubters, guys that we know are going to get on either their first or their second ballot. And there's just absolutely zero question that they're going to be in the Hall of Fame. The second category is the Joe Mauer category, which, they might not be absolute no doubters. There might be a hole or two in their resume, but that they're going to get in eventually to Cooperstown. The third category is called the Jim Cott category, which Jim Cott was a Hall of Famer that just got in this year. He probably should have got in 20 years ago, but eventually over time, a guy that should have been in Cooperstown 20 years ago eventually gets in. And so that's that Jim Cott category, the third tier of Hall of Famers. Then we also have 2 other categories, the Tory Hunter category, which is guys that were really, really, really good, but not quite Hall of Fame worthy. And then the Byron Buxton category, which is it's just too early to tell. We think that there's a lot of potential. They could potentially develop into Hall of Famers, but not quite yet, too early to tell. So the 5 categories that we're going to break down here is going to be, once again, the Harmon Killebrews category, Joe Mauer, Jim Cott, Tory Hunter, and Byron Buxton. So my first member of the Harmon Killebrews category, that's where we're going to start. The no doubters. My first member is Albert Pujols. So Albert Pujols, if you're not a baseball fan, you might be surprised to find out that, yes, he is still playing. He stopped being a productive player about 5 years ago, but he is still playing today. Albert Pujols has 3,340 career hits, 686 career home runs. He's truly one of the greatest hitters we have ever seen. He's arguably the greatest right-handed hitter the game of baseball has ever seen. He's still playing today. He took part in the home run derby in this year's All-Star game, and he was kind of an honorary All-Star in the game as well. Albert Pujols, Neil.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer pick, Tim. For my first Harmon Killebrews selection, I'm going to go with maybe the other no-brainer on this list. I mean, there's a few no-brainers, but I'm going to go with Miguel Cabrera. An all-timer in terms of the numbers he's put up. It's pretty incredible, just the longevity of his career too, when you remember him playing on like the 2003 Florida Marlins team that won the World Series as a 20-year-old too. And he's put up all-time numbers. It's kind of been cool to see. He's kind of having a little bit of a bounce back year in terms of production too at 39 too. He's got 3,000 hits. He's got 500 home runs. He's got all the markers. He's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer.
What's incredible about Cabrera is in the last 5 years, Albert Pujols' batting average has taken a nosedive, his career batting average. But Miguel Cabrera, even though he's been on his last leg for a couple of years now, he's still a career 309 hitter. That's remarkable considering how basically washed up he's been the last couple of years. As a reminder, Miguel Cabrera won 2 MVPs, won a triple crown. The fact that he plays in Detroit, you wish he had a couple of winning teams with Detroit, but since he's been there, it just hasn't been a lot of good baseball in Detroit.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, there was maybe some conversations a few years ago when, they were giving MVPs to Miguel Cabrera over Mike Trout, and maybe Mike Trout had these like advanced stats that put him as the clear MVP, but they're still giving it to Miguel Cabrera because of some of the counting stats he has a little bit better than Mike Trout, but it doesn't like take away from the fact that Miguel Cabrera is still an all-time player.
My next guy in the Harmon Killebrews category is Justin Verlander. So Justin Verlander is having maybe his best season of his entire career this year at 39 years old. He was an all-star, 240 career wins, 132 losses, a career 3.27 ERA. He's in the top 15 ever for strikeouts, 2-time Cy Young winner, won an MVP as a pitcher, and was a Rookie of the Year way back in 2005. Verlander's a no-doubt Hall of Famer, and he's one of these guys that has always had a little bit of Nolan Ryan to him. He was getting a lot of Nolan Ryan comparisons back when he came up in 2005, 2006, because at that point, if you remember, it was the old, this guy throws harder in the 9th inning than he does in the 1st inning. Remember, that was Verlander back when he was playing for Detroit. And now, since he's got with the analytical department of Houston, he has taken his game to like a whole nother level, even in his late 30s. And he's a no-doubt Hall of Famer.
Yeah, good pick, Tim. And it seems like these last couple of years, especially like you said, like he was maybe kind of his production was kind of waning a little bit in those last couple of years at Detroit, but he's found this resurgence as he's gotten older at Houston. But so my next pick in the Harmon Killebrews category is Mike Trout. So Mike Trout, everyone knows him if you're a baseball fan. He's just, if he retired today as a 30-year-old, he'd still be a first ballot Hall of Famer with the amount of numbers he puts up. If he continues on this pace, he's going to be a clear 500 home run guy. He's batting career 300 hitter, plays a good defensive center field. He's just putting up great numbers since the time he stepped on the field. And like we've talked about it before, it's a shame he's not on better teams. It's incredible that the Angels haven't put a winning team on the field since he's been there. Yeah, he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer no matter what happens the rest of his career.
My next no doubter in that Harmon Killebrews category is Clayton Kershaw. So Clayton Kershaw has arguably been the best pitcher in baseball really for the last 10 years. What's kind of amazing about Kershaw is he broke into the major leagues back in 2008 as a 20-year-old. 15 years later at 34, he was an all-star again this year. He has really been a mainstay in the Dodgers rotation, started over 20 games essentially every year of his career the last 15 years, but he's only got 192 wins. So he is your classic example of like the modern win not being as valuable as the win in prior generations, because he has led the league in ERA 6 different times, but he only has 192 wins to his credit. Granted, he's only got 87 losses as well. He's led the league in wins 3 different times. He's a 2-time 20-game winner. He's won 21 games twice, but he's had years where he had a 1.69 ERA in 2016, and he only had 12 wins. You know, he only won 10 wins one year. You know, so he's one of these guys that just didn't have a lot of wins, even though he had a ton of he had a ton of great years. I mean, career 2.49 ERA. I think the classic comparison is like Sandy Koufax, right? Like a lot of Sandy Koufax's cumulative numbers aren't as good as the great Nolan Ryan's or Greg Maddux, Roger Clemens's, but it was inarguable he was the best in the game at his time. And I think Kershaw is the same way.
Good pick, Tim. Oh yeah. So for my next pick, I'm going to go with my first pitcher. I'm going to go with Max Scherzer. You know, just like these other pitchers we've talked about, he's had an incredible career. He's going to get to 200 wins unless something terrible happens. He's at 196 wins, which it's almost turning out to be like 200 wins is now, at least from my standpoint, like the new 300 wins almost, because you know, these guys aren't pitching as much. They're not getting as many wins. Wins aren't necessarily valued like they maybe were back in the day where guys were throwing complete games year in and year out. You know, he's a guy, he's won 20 games a season a couple times, 3-time Cy Young Award winner. You know, he's still putting up great numbers this year. With the Mets, he's still got a 2.09 ERA, a career 3.12 ERA. You know, just a no doubt Hall of Famer in my opinion.
Yeah, there's no way that you can look at Max Scherzer and think like that guy's not a Hall of Fame guy when you see him pitch. He's 15th all time in strikeouts right now, which is astounding to me. I think Verlander's 14th and Scherzer is 15th. Neil, do you have anyone else in your Harmon Killebrews category? Because for me, that was as many as I had. I had 6 guys in that category, and we named all 6 of them already. Do you have anyone else in that category?
Yeah, I do, Tim. So I have, you know, I think I thought of this exercise a little bit differently than you. Because I did a little bit of projection for some younger players. So I have Juan Soto on my list too, because, you know, he's a guy, he's only, what is he? Let's see here. He is 23 years old. He's already had 5 seasons in the majors. He's batting, you know, he's a 300 hitter. He's, you know, when it's all said and done, unless something terrible happens, he's going to have all-time numbers when it's all said and done. I mean, I understand it's a lot to like project him to be a first ballot Hall of Famer when he's only 23 years old.
But I mean, how many guys have we seen that have been great for 5 years and then they just never panned out?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, but I think the purpose of this exercise, at least from the way I heard it, or thought of it at least, was to look at these guys and project some of the guys we thought would be in these categories when it's all said and done. because otherwise I feel like we're just putting everyone in the, the too early to tell category. Whereas I think it'd be fun if you look at a guy like Juan Soto, who got in the league right away and was a great contributor as a 19-year-old. He batted .292 with a 923 OPS as a 19-year-old. He's already won a World Series. I think he was World Series MVP too. I could be wrong about that. But I think you can project out some of these guys where he had a year when he was 21, he batted .350 with a
right. But
two.
At what point, at one point we all thought Robinson Cano, Alfonso Soriano, like some of those guys were going to be Hall of Famers too. I mean, Andrew Jones isn't even in the Hall of Fame, right? And so I think Juan Soto and Andrew Jones are actually pretty good comparisons because Andrew Jones was hitting home runs in the World Series at 18 years old, right? And he's still not even in the Hall of Fame, Andrew Jones. And you would have said, and now you're putting him in first ballot Hall of Fame, Juan Soto.
Yeah, I kind of think Andrew Jones should be a Hall of Famer. Is that steroids? Is there steroid suspicion with him?
No, I think he's a Hall of Famer too. He's not in my Harmon Killebrews category.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You got to remember, Neil, once these guys sign for $500 million, they start eating a lot of crap too, and they get fat.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, Juan Soto's a little early. But I mean, Shohei is a first ballot Hall of Famer. I mean, just the fact that, granted, I understand he's got to put up some more years, but the fact that he's put up production that we haven't seen in 100 years, from the fact that he's a two-way player, which is incredible, and it's almost just for that fact alone, he deserves a spot in the Hall of Fame, and he's going to get a spot in the Hall of Fame on the first ballot because he's not even, you can't compare him to anyone, at least for anyone that we've seen since we've been baseball fans, because, he's a unicorn in that sense where he's putting up numbers from both sides of the plate that we haven't seen before. So I have him in my Killebrews category too.
I've got Ohtani in my Mauer category, but the next category down, because it's too early to tell for me if he's going to do this his entire career. Like he's doing this now. I am still a little bit skeptical. Part of it is because I'm partially in disbelief of how amazing this guy is. To think like in 2 years from now, is he going to be just pitching or just hitting? Because the toll it's going to take on his body just seems unfathomable to me. At some point, is he going to have to do one or the other for a season or multiple seasons in a row due to injury, due to his body wearing down? But to your point, he's probably a first ballot Hall of Famer anyway, just based on what he's already done. And as long as he plays for 10 more years. So I'll give you that one.
Okay. No,
what other first ballot Hall of Famers do you have?
Okay, so I have Greinke too. I have Greinke because, again, that might be a little bit. I'm just looking at his stats now. Like he, you're right. He's not on the Verlander and Scherzer threshold in the sense that where he, he's the same age as those guys. He's actually a couple years younger than Verlander, and he is slowing down. He's probably. I wonder if this might be his last year. He's still been below average for the Royals as a starter this year, and he's been that way for the last few years too. But I mean, he's got over 220 wins, and like I said, I almost think of 200 wins as like the new 300 wins when it comes down to evaluating Hall of Fame caliber pitchers. I've always liked Greinke because I feel like he's like an interesting character to follow as a baseball fan. Not that should go into like Hall of Fame consideration necessarily, but he's been, he's been one of the best pitchers in the majors for the last 20 years. And I think he's going to end up being a first ballot Hall of Famer.
You think he's getting, I think he's a Hall of Famer. I don't think he's getting in on the first ballot.
Yeah. I think the problem is I feel like there's like a backlog of Hall of Famers that are on the ballot now that are like not, there's like a lot of debate on whether they're going to get in or not, because there's like steroid guys that are still on the ballot who like some people like and some people don't like. And there's just so many Hall of Fame caliber guys that are on the ballot right now where you're probably right. He's not going to show up on the ballot the first year and get in.
Zach Greinke, 9 career home runs.
9 career home runs. Exactly.
Also got a hit as a pinch hitter in the postseason. Remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that.
That might have been the World Series.
Again, we're kind of grasping at straws on these different categories too, because
right. Okay, so the Mauer category. Let's move on to the Mauer category.
Okay.
So this is guys, obviously Joe Mauer, we both think he's a Hall of Famer. So obviously this category is guys that we think are Hall of Famers, but might not be getting in on that first ballot. My first one on the list might be a little bit controversial because I'm not ranking these, but it's Yadier Molina. So Yadier Molina does not have, the best, measurables, I guess you'd say. Like if you look at any statistical category as far as offensive production goes, it's not like surefire Hall of Famer. But when you factor in that he's been the best defensive catcher over the past, essentially since he's been in the game, Yadier Molina has been the best defensive catcher in baseball. He's won multiple World Series rings. He's just been a mainstay in St. Louis, which is a great fan base, which also factors into Hall of Fame voting. So I think Yadier Molina is going to be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, I agree with that too. And I think too, and I think of this with Mauer as well, that like, because he played catcher for so long, he does, even his diminished offensive stats, they don't stack up against the all-time guys. They do compare pretty well against other catchers. So my first guy in the Mauer category is Joey Votto, who's one of these guys who has been kind of just a pillar of consistency over these last, 15 years or so. Every year for the Reds, he's been one of those examples of a guy who works the account and draws walks and has always had a great on-base percentage. And, I got a text from one of my buddies this year who, he texted me kind of sadly that Votto's batting average finally dipped below 300. So, I don't think that's going to hurt his Hall of Fame considerations, but it is kind of sad to see he's kind of having a little bit of a down year. He might be on his way out, but he's been a great player for 16 years or so. And so he's going to be a Hall of Famer at some point.
Votto's baseball reference page is just fascinating because if you look at it, he doesn't have like the cumulative numbers that you want out of a Hall of Famer. He has just over 2,000 hits. He's got 341 home runs, 1,100 RBIs. So really good, but not great. But he has led the league in walks 5 different times. He's led the league in on-base percentage 7 different times, slugging percentage once, and OPS twice. The guy's career on-base percentage is .413. That is an incredible one season for a lot of guys. That's been his entire career. I wonder what the highest OBP is for a guy not in the Hall of Fame that isn't named like Joe Jackson. It's, Joey Votto has to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
My next guy, Neil, is a little bit of a younger guy. Well, he's not all that young, I guess, anymore, is Nolan Aronado. So Nolan Aronado right now is in his 10th season in the major leagues. He's a 7-time All-Star, 9-time Gold Glove winner. He's won the Gold Glove essentially every year he's played in the major leagues. He's a 4-time Silver Slugger. I think he's going to be in Cooperstown before all said and done.
Okay.
Did you know he's led the NL in home runs 3 different times and led the NL in RBIs twice?
Yeah, I didn't know that. And, I had him on my borderline category, and I wonder if I'm kind of underrating him a little bit because he's got that stench of Coors Field on him where he may have some inflated statistics because of that. What type of year is he having this year?
Well, let's look it up. Nolan Arenado. I mean, St. Louis is filled with these guys right now too, because they got Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, Yadier Molina, Adam Wainwright. Like all those guys are kind of what seemed to be in the same class. This year with Arenado, he's hitting 293. He's got an OBP of 360. He's got 19 home runs, 60 RBIs. So he's having a typical Nolan Arenado year.
Okay. Yeah. So my next guy in this category, and he's barely still an active player. He was down in the minors for some of this year, but Robinson Cano. And I know you kind of maybe
Whoa.
I mean, I look at this guy and I think I could potentially be overrating him a little bit, because I think historically second basemen haven't put up numbers like they are in today's game, where now it's like second baseman is like kind of where a lot of teams maybe stash like some of their best hitters, because they don't see it as like necessarily like a premium defensive position like it may have been thought of in the past. So like if you compare Robinson Cano to other second basemen historically, and one of these ratings that I look at is like this Jaws rating, and this guy has Cano ranked as the 7th best second baseman of all time. So if you think of him as the 7th best second baseman of all time, he is he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, or could be, but I don't think he's going to get on the first ballot. I think he'll eventually get in. He's a guy who in the top 5 MVP voting 4 times, 6 times in the top 10 MVP voters. He's a career 300 hitter. He's got over 300 home runs. Like I said, as a second baseman.
But isn't all this a moot point because he's been popped for steroids twice? Like if Bonds and Clemens aren't in, how do you put Robbie Cano in? He got suspended for an entire season. He's been popped for steroids twice. There is no chance Robinson Cano ever is in Cooperstown.
That's true. Yeah, I got to look at these subjective factors.
There's just no. I mean, come on, Neil. Robbie Cano is dead. He's dead on arrival.
Okay. All right. Can I pick another guy, or do I just lose that one?
No, you lose it.
Okay.
All right. My next pick is Bryce Harper.
Okay.
So Bryce Harper, a guy that's still in his 20s right now, 2-time MVP, Rookie of the Year, 7-time All-Star, already has, 282 home runs, 800 RBIs, career OBP of 391. I mean, he's going to play another 7-8 years. He's going to get to, I think, he might not get to 500 home runs, actually. 218. He'll get to 500 home runs. But, yeah, I mean, I think Bryce Harper is going to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I had him on mine too.
Yeah.
Okay, so my next guy, and I don't think he has any steroid suspicions yet, who I think is going to get in the Hall of Fame, is Manny Machado. Like I said, he's 30 years old now, but he's been in the majors since he's 19 years old. He's already got 1,500 hits, so he could potentially get to 3,000 if he keeps it up. He's been, he's having a good year this year for the Padres. Batting almost 300, got a 886 OPS. In kind of what's been kind of a down offensive season. He's just a good player, and he's going to get in the Hall of Fame. I don't know what else to say.
So I'm out of guys in the Mauer category. My Killebrew category was Pujols, Cabrera, Verlander, Kershaw, Scherzer, Trout. My Mauer category was Yadier Molina, Joey Votto, Nolan Arenado, Shohei Ohtani, and Bryce Harper. Neil, who else do you have in your Mauer category?
Okay, I have Mookie Betts too.
Oh yeah,
Mookie Betts. He's. I think one of the things too we got to think about, and like I said, I haven't been good about considering these other factors like steroids and stuff. But Mookie Betts has been a 2-time World Series champion, right?
Yeah.
2-time World Series champion.
Red Sox and Dodgers.
Yeah, exactly. MVP once, an all-star, 5 or 6 times it looks like. Um, he's already putting up, he's not going to have a huge like counting stats, but he's only 29 years old. I didn't realize that Mookie Betts was a year younger than Manny Machado. For some reason, I thought Manny Machado was younger than he was, but he's a 300 hitter career. He's he's going to get in the Hall of Fame. I think for just the fact that he's, World Series hero for the Red Sox, probably win a couple more World Series with the Dodgers too when it's all said and done.
Is that it for your Mauer category?
Well, no. So
you have any more steroid
more
guys in there? You have Jose Canseco in there too?
Okay, so like I said before, I'm doing a little bit of projection.
All right, well, list off who else do you have in the Mauer category?
Okay. So I won't get into that. I'm going to get into Ronald Acuna. He's already won a World Series,
but he didn't really win.
He didn't play. He's only 24 years old. He's not having a great year this year, which sucks. But when you look at his 5 years as a 24-year-old, he's putting up a 900 OPS as a 24-year-old for his 5 years of his career. He's already got over 100 home runs. I just think when it's all said and done, he's going to be an all-time guy.
He's in my too early to tell. Like Acuna could still get fat.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And then some of these other guys too, like,
how many guys do you have in this category?
So
just list them off, Neil.
I have Vlad Guerrero Jr., Rafael Devers, Carlos Correa, Wander Franco, and Fernando Tatis.
Wow, you did a lot of projecting.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Otherwise, you're just going to have 40 guys in the too early to tell category.
Okay.
Where, like, at this point, like, those guys, like I said, Correa is getting older. Like, he's 28 years old, and I almost think as a 28-year-old, it's like he's too old almost to be in the too early to tell category. Like, at that point, you should have had some good seasons at that point where, like, if you can kind of project out over the next few years, like he kind of is what he is at this point, and he's going to be on pace for a Hall of Fame season. So I look at Correa like kind of like that, where like he is what he is. I don't even think
Correa is good enough for I don't even think he's a Hall of Famer.
See, why do you say that? He just doesn't have the numbers.
I just don't think he's a Hall of Fame guy. I think he's really, really good. I don't think he's a Hall of Famer.
Well, like I said, I think if you play shortstop for 5 or 6 years, like when it's all said and done, he's going to have, you compare him to other shortstops, he's going to be an all-time guy as a shortstop. He's a good defensive shortstop too. He's been playing for a long time, so he's going to have a lot of these counting stats too.
But like, remember how good Nomar Garciaparra was until he was 30? And Nomar Garciaparra wasn't even a thought on the Hall of Fame, Brett. Like, how good you have to be to get into the Hall of Fame. Like, Nomar was incredible for 10 years and didn't get in. Correa's never even come close to as good as Garciaparra was at his best.
Yeah, but okay, let me look at Nomar's stats.
Look at Nomar's stats, Neil. This is my point. Like, is Correa's peak? Is Correa ever going to be the best shortstop in the game while he's playing?
Why wouldn't he have the chance to be the best shortstop in the game? Like, and I feel like I can project Correa out to be a long-time shortstop because I feel like he has the arm to make up for maybe some diminished speed when he gets older. So like he can play shortstop a little later on than some of these other guys.
What do you got for Garcia Parra stats there?
Yeah, he does have good stats. Like a career 313 hitter.
Right.
He only played 14 years in the majors. I think that kind of hurt him a lot because he didn't have this long career.
Right, but like he won back-to-back batting titles at 25 and 26 years old, hitting 357 and 372. So this is my point. Like, if you're not stacking up like tons and tons of those years in a row, you're not a Hall of Famer. Like Nomar, as good as he is in his 20s, he probably didn't even last more than one ballot when it came for the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to with Correa in comparison to Nomar is if when he hits his like age 33 season, is he going to fall off a cliff like Nomar did? Or is he going to continue to be productive? And considering maybe he moves to third base or whatever the case may be. Because I understand, like, Correa does not have the Nomar peak.
Right.
But it comes down to longevity, and I think there's a chance that Correa could be a Hall of Famer, but maybe it is too early to tell. Shoot.
All right, Jim Cott category, guys that will eventually get in. I've got 5 guys in this category. Neil, how many do you have?
Okay, so I thought of this category differently. Like, I didn't think of it as like they're eventually going to get in, but I think of it as like a borderline category.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the same thing.
Borderline. Like, I don't know if they'll get in.
So how many do you have? Do you have 50 guys in this category?
I have 8, but one of them's Arenado, who you have the Mauer category. So I have 7.
All right. So my first guy is Giancarlo Stanton.
Okay. I had him on my list too.
All right. So yeah, Stanton, I mean, that guy is just an absolute freak. He's going to have 500 home runs. He's, going to get a World Series probably in New York. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame.
Okay. So for this category, I have Chris Sale.
Whoa. Okay.
Let me pull up Chris Sale stats.
Yeah, let's hear this Chris Sale case.
Okay, so the thing about Chris Sale is, I think if you look at his peak, for the Red Sox, he doesn't have any bad seasons. When he's been a pitcher in the majors, he hasn't put up any terrible numbers. In fact, he has some years where he's a career 300 ERA guy, but like some of these years, his one of these stats I look at a lot is ERA plus, and he's career ERA plus of 140. So he's like 40% better than the average pitcher over the course of his career. He's only 33 years old, so he still has some time to put up numbers, but he has been injured and it isn't looking promising at this point in his career. But
how many wins does he have?
He only has 114 wins. So he's probably on the not quite list, but
okay. My next guy is Jose Altuve. Altuve is former MVP, 8-time All-Star, World Series ring, led the league, has 3 batting titles, led the league in stolen bases twice, led the league in hits 4 times, probably will end up with about 2,500 career hits. He's got 1,864 right now. I think Altuve will end up being a Hall of Famer.
Okay. So my next guy on this list, and I think if he hadn't been having this resurgence this year, and my guy's Paul Goldschmidt, by the way, he's been a steady guy for the course of his career. He's almost a 300 career hitter. He's got over 300 home runs. He's only 34. But the thing about his 34 season where he's putting up his best numbers he's put up in his whole career as a 34-year-old. And so, like, if he retired today, I don't think he's a Hall of Famer. But just the fact that he's having a career year for the Cardinals this year, like, I can project him out a little bit over these next couple of years. He puts together, another few solid seasons. He's already put together 55 career WAR as a first baseman. He's been really good for the course of his career. He's led the league in homers once. He's leading the league in slugging, average, on base percentage, and OPS, like I said, as a 34-year-old this year. And so, like I said, I don't think if he retired this year, he'd be a Hall of Famer. I think he's borderline. But just the fact that he's having a career year this year, I think he's in good shape to potentially make it somewhere down the line.
So the other guys that I have in the Jim Cott category are guys we've already mentioned. So Manny Machado and Zach Greinke, I had them in my Jim Cott category. The last guy that we have not mentioned that is in my Jim Cott category, so essentially the last Hall of Famer that I have on my list, is Craig Kimbrell. So Craig Kimbrell, it has 390 career saves. He's in the top 10 all-time for saves, has a career ERA in 683 career games. He's got an ERA of 2.29. He's led the league in saves 4 times. Granted, the last time he did it was back in 2014. But if you remember, basically his first 8 years in the major leagues from 2010 to 2018, he was basically the best relief pitcher the game of baseball has ever seen. He's been kind of a mess, really, the last 4 years, 2019, 20, 21, and 22. But he's still a decent closer in the major leagues today. But due to the fact that he was as good as the game has ever seen from essentially 2010 to 2018, I think that'll get him in the Hall of Fame.
Okay. I have another guy who you probably maybe don't have in this list. Well, you obviously don't have him on this list. But I look at a guy like Freddie Freeman, and like I said, when you say the name Freddie Freeman, I probably don't think of him as a Hall of Famer. But he's only 32 years old. He's got an MVP award under his belt. He's got a World Series with the Braves. He's almost a 300 hitter. And he's still producing as a 32-year-old. And so, you look at his stats over the course of his career, he's never really led the league in home runs, other than he does have the MVP under his belt. Led the league in doubles a couple of years. He's going to have over 300 home runs. If he can put together a next 4 or 5 more good seasons, I think he has a shot to get it in.
Yeah, I had Freeman in my Tory Hunter category, which is the really good but not quite Hall of Fame level. So what other guys do you have in the Jim Cott category, Neil?
So I have Aaron Judge in my Jim Cott category too. I think what has hurt Judge was that he came onto the scene late. Once he got it to the majors, he's been great, but he just doesn't have a long track record yet of really great success. But you look at him now as on his age 30 season, and he's having a career year, and he's almost gotten better each year he's been in the majors. So, well, other than his rookie season was great, but he's still progressing and getting better. He's 6'7", he's plays center field, he's on pace for 60 homers as a 30-year-old. He's going to be hopefully a lifelong Yankee. So I think, like I said, we have to do some projection with them, but I think he's on pace to be a borderline Hall of Famer.
Yeah, you're probably right about Judge, and he's probably the guy that I look at with that Tory Hunter category that I probably should move up to the Jim Cott category, just because he's going to have multiple historic single seasons that are hard to ignore. It's kind of a shame that Roger Maris isn't in the Hall of Fame, and he had that historic season, and he had a really good career outside of that historic season as well. I kind of was looking at Judge in that same vein, which is why I didn't put him in the Hall of Fame. But granted, if he has, 52 home runs one year and then 62 another year, how do you keep that guy out of the Hall of Fame? I guess my question with Judge is he's 6'7", he strikes out all the time. Is there a point when he gets into his 30s that his body just gives up, and then it becomes a lot harder to, make contact and do the things at 6'7" that you need to do it in the major leagues. It's rare that you see a guy that's that big doing it in baseball in his late 30s.
Yeah, I agree with you, Tim. And I was kind of like, I was skeptical of him coming into this year because I was like, how could you possibly, turn down an extension with the Yankees when you're already 30 years old? And it's been incredible to like see him bet on himself in that sense and like put himself in a position where he's going to probably get a ton of money after this year, after he hopefully breaks Roger Maris's record. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I'm rooting for him to get 60 plus home runs too. But yeah, I think when it's all said and done, he's going to get in, unless he breaks down.
Do you have anyone else in your Jim Cott category?
No, I don't.
Okay. So my Jim Cott category, just to recap, was Giancarlo Stanton, Jose Altuve, Manny Machado, Zach Greinke, and Craig Kimbrell. Neil, what was your Jim Cott category? Can you list them off again?
Yeah, I had Paul Goldschmidt, Freddie Freeman, Aaron Judge, and Chris Sale. I think some of the advanced stats really like Chris Sale, though.
All right. So my Tory Hunter category, which is really, really good players. Obviously, I love Tory Hunter. Guy won double-digit Gold Gloves, but he just, he's not quite Cooperstown worthy. So I'm just going to list those off. So here's my Tory Hunter category. I had Paul Goldschmidt, Nelson Cruz, Carlos Correa, Anthony Rizzo. I also had Aaron Judge, which I'm probably going to move him up, I think. Then I had Kenley Jansen, Madison Bumgarner, Adam Wainwright, Jake DeGrom, Freddie Freeman, and Garrett Cole.
Okay.
Any thoughts on that list?
Yeah, I had a lot of these same guys. Only guy I would add, and like I said, I don't think he's not a Hall of Famer. This isn't a Hall of Famer category. But like I look at a guy like Salvador Perez, like he doesn't have the great offensive numbers, but he's played his whole career with the Royals. He's got a couple World Series titles.
He's got one World Series title.
He's got one World Series title. But I like those type of guys who've played their whole career with one team. And I think as a catcher, like he stacks up well. He's not going to get in. I'm not saying he's a Hall of Famer. This isn't a Hall of Famer category, but he like compares well with other catchers.
You're right.
I have Xander Bogaerts in there too. Because like I said, longtime shortstop for the Red Sox. He's been a solid player for ever since he's been in the majors. He's got a couple World Series titles. Like he's just been a guy that's been an important baseball player for the last however many years. I also have Andrew McCutchen. Did you have Andrew McCutchen on your list?
I didn't. I have him slightly below Tory Hunter, but maybe I should have him on there. Really good player, but no chance.
Yeah. Let's see. You had Nelson Cruz.
Nelson Cruz, yeah.
Okay. I have Josh Donaldson. Okay. Should we move on?
All right. So the final category is the Byron Buxton category, which is just the too early category. Neil, I don't know how you'd have anybody in this category because you projected them all out as first ballot Hall of Famers. But my Byron Buxton category, I have 7 guys on it. So it's number 1 is Byron Buxton. Number 2 is Juan Soto. Number 3 is Ronald Acuna. Then I have Yordan Alvarez, Fernando Tatis Jr., Vlad Guerrero Jr., and Austin Riley for the Braves.
Okay. So, like, I didn't even have Buxton on it because I don't even think Buxton, like I said, he's already 28 years old. And I feel like by the time you're 28, you should have had in the bank some good seasons.
I'm not giving up on him yet, Neil.
No, I'm not either. I just feel like he doesn't play enough games to be a Hall of Fame player at this point. But
Yeah.
Like even if everything goes right. But anyways,
well, and he also needs to, when it's second and third and less than 2 outs, he needs to not pop up to the first baseman.
Yeah, I agree. So other than that, now I'm like kind of questioning some of these guys I have on this list. I have
Who's your list? The entire first round of this year's draft?
I have Luis Robert. He's 24 years old for the White Sox. He's batting 300. He had a great year last year. And then I have Luis Ariz. If the Rod Carew comps, go as planned, then he may get in too.
Luis Ariz might be our last 3,000 hits guy.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think I have a lot of hope for him being the next 400 hitter too. What about Francisco Lindor?
Oh man, that's one I missed. That's not too early to tell though. He wouldn't be too early to tell. He'd be on another list, right?
But he's the same age as Buxton.
Is he?
He's 28 years old. I think the problem with him, it just last 2 years he hasn't been that good for the Mets. But if you I think of him as he is a guy who's trending down. If we would have done this 2 years ago when he was coming off a season, great season with the Indians, we would have put him solidly in he's going to probably make the Hall of Fame if he continues on, but he's really diminished his production since he's been with the Mets.
Neil, once guys get paid,
it
goes a different direction.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I don't think there's a good hope that he's going to get in. But I guess I had Pete Alonso too. Let me see if there's any case for him again. But
do you think Pete Alonso gets in just by the time they're voting for him in the Hall of Fame? It's like they're counting home run derby titles.
Yeah, I think that might be his best shot. But I mean, he's only 27. He had a year where he hit 50 home runs. So you look at it, if he could do that a few more times, he has a shot to get in.
Well, look, if the Mets win the World Series, that's a big thing with a lot of these teams and why Freddy Freeman probably will end up in the Hall of Fame. If your team wins the World Series and you're a star on that team, you're in the conversation.
Yeah, I actually don't feel that bad about putting Pete Alonso on this list now that I look at him. He's only played 4 seasons.
What's kind of crazy, if you think about that, it's crazy that Darryl Strawberry's not in the Hall of Fame or Keith Hernandez isn't in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Keith Hernandez was really, really good for well over a decade. Strawberry, of course, and Doc Gooden. But Doc Gooden and Strawberry had just as good of career numbers as a lot of the guys we're talking about here.
Right.
Yeah. Dwight Gooden's numbers are Zach Greinke's numbers.
Yeah, and I think that's where I've ran into problems with this exercise is I'm thinking of guys who are the important players of this generation. But you mentioned some important players of the generation in the 80s with the Mets, players who were on World Series teams, and they didn't get in. So those guys don't always get in, even when they have really solid careers.
Yeah, Bernie Williams. Think about how good Bernie Williams was, and he won 4 World Series titles with the Yankees, and he was an afterthought when it came to the World Series or Hall of Fame. Isn't that crazy? Jorge Posada. Yeah. People talk Jorge Posada should be in the Hall of Fame. He's no chance that guy's getting in.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, those guys you would have thought they would be in the Hall of Fame or at least get more consideration. But
from that group, from the Yankees group that won 4 titles, most of them won 4 titles, some of them won 5 titles. Pettit, the core 4 won 5 titles. Pettit, Rivera, Jeter, Posada won 5 titles. A lot of the other guys won 3 titles. Some of them won 4 titles. And only Rivera and Jeter are getting in.
Yeah, that's incredible. Well, I'm just thinking when pitchers go, and maybe that's why Chris Sale is ridiculous. But what other pitchers are going to get into the Hall of Fame? If like we have some no doubters, and we mentioned those, but like, how can you get in as a pitcher anymore when in this era where you're not going to put up these amazing numbers, career numbers at least?
Yeah, like Jake DeGrom is kind of unquestionably the filthiest pitcher in Major League Baseball today, but he's probably never going to get into the Hall of Fame because he's been hurt most of his career.
Yeah. Yeah, no. I mean, yeah,
like
you would
Adam
think,
Wainwright. You kind of think like guys like Adam Wainwright would have to be the guys that get in, but it's hard to make a case for Wainwright when you have guys like David Cone and just a lot of these historical guys that aren't in yet.
Yeah, but I know. I just feel like Chris Sale has been a more dominant pitcher than Adam Wainwright when he's pitched. I don't know. Wainwright's got a better Hall of Fame resume.
Isn't Chris Sale just Johan Santana? Like without the accolade? Like if you're talking about Chris Sale, like Chris Sale's a poor man's Johan.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I'm projecting that Chris Sale can have a few more solid years. Like Johan was out of the game when he was 33. Actually, before that, his last full year for the Mets was his age 31 season.
That's incredible. He was probably lying about his age, though.
That's true.
He was probably like 37. Because remember, he was a Rule 5 guy. Remember?
Yeah. And he was a reliever to start out. And
everybody probably thought he was 23, and he was actually like 29. And that's why he went from like a nobody to a Cy Young guy in 12 months.
Yeah, except I think of the guys that lie about their age as being Dominicans, and he was Venezuelan. But
true.
Probably the same situation.
What do you think? Are the odds better that Albert Pujols is 47 years old right now, or are the odds better that he did steroids?
Because
the Pujols story doesn't make sense on its face. Like he's either older than he claimed or he took steroids, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like there's a chance that he did both.
Right.
Yeah,
pretty good chance.
Yeah, there's a decent chance he did both, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think he's 47. What's his actual age? Is it 43?
Is he claims to be 43. I'm almost positive he's 45.
Yeah, he looks like he's at least 45.
Well, part of it too is his numbers make a lot more sense on the back end of his career if you just add 2 years to his age, because he fell off the cliff. He fell off the cliff big time back in 2017. And in that year, it said he was 37, and probably he was actually 39.
Yeah.
And that was six seasons ago.
And it's funny how the story with him, I remember when he was going up with the Cardinals, the story was always like, he is the fastest guy to X amount of home runs at age 25, at age 27. And he was just putting unbelievable numbers up, at these really young ages. And then, it's another story of like, he got the big contract and then he never, so it makes sense in that sense where he got the big contract and then his numbers fell off a cliff.
He actually kind of fell off the cliff back in 2015. In 2015, he hit 244 and his on-base percentage was 307. Like, that's a terrible year. That was like almost 10 seasons ago.
Yeah, I know.
It's incredible.
I want to look at like Tory's career. I think Tory Hunter's career is underappreciated from the sense that like he was a guy that was drafted, out of high school as like this raw athletic center fielder guy. And he got to the majors as that type of player where he was like winning Gold Gloves every year and like, was a decent offensive player, but was kind of like a guy who went up there and just took hacks. But then like he goes to the Angels and he ends up, he signs a big deal at the Angels. In his, he's post, what is he? He's after the age of 30 when he signs with the Angels, and he loses some of his like defensive prowess, what made him a great player for the Twins. But in doing so, he develops into like this really solid hitter. And he moves to right field, and he puts up some of his best offensive numbers when he's an Angel, when he's in his mid 30s. And it's just cool to see a guy like that who like developed over the course of his career from this guy who was really raw, really athletic, loses his athleticism, but gains like this really great hitting tool. And when he comes back to the Twins, when he's, 39 years old, and he's like the old statesman for the Twins, now he's like, he's a polished hitter. He knows the game really well. And it was cool to see that his whole career come full circle like that.
What do you think Tory Hunter's career WAR is?
45.
50.
Yeah. So he's almost better than we give him credit for, because I feel like we didn't see his best seasons. His best seasons were with the Angels.
He is truly the right underneath the Hall of Fame class.
Yeah.
Like right underneath it.
Well, the thing is too, you compare him to some of the guys they've let in recent years, like Harold Baines. He has better numbers than Harold Baines. I mean, there's probably a few guys he has better numbers in, when it's all if you look at the career totals and stuff. But
yeah,
I said,
Tory Hunter hit 22 home runs in his age 40 season.
Yeah, he was great.
Well,
thanks for
podcast. What a podcast, Neil.
That was fun. Yeah, I wish there's a couple guys where I should have dug into a little bit more, especially at the steroid stuff. But I kind of think some of these steroid guys should get in. I mean, Bonds, Clemens, I'd put those guys in. But yeah, like Canal, that's pretty damning.
You can't have a Hall of Fame without Clemens and Bonds. Those guys were just they're so instrumental. They were the game of baseball for 20 years that it's almost worse having them not in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it really is. And I think, they're going to get in eventually in whatever these other veterans committees or whatever the case may be. They're going to get in, but just the fact that they're excluded right now puts this black mark on the Hall. But like I said, I like this conversation though, because this conversation is a fun conversation to have for baseball people, because you can look at some of these guys and you don't just have to look at the raw stats amounts. You can look at it from more of a subjective lens, take their MVPs, take their World Series titles into consideration, and have that all factored in, have factored in how important, quote unquote, they are to the game and that sort of thing. And I think that's kind of, these conversations may be a little bit more fun than who's the best player in the game at this time.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thanks, Neil.
Thanks, Tim. I appreciate it.
Have a great week, Moonlighters.
It's Moonlight Graham, yeah. It's a pretty good program, broadcasting to the heartland. Sports stories for the everyman. It's Moonlight Graham, yeah. Please follow us on Instagram. You're loving us on Twitter too. You download every pod we do. It's Moonlight Graham.